Good morning. Welcome to the morning news. We're going to be talking crypto, going to be talking Bitcoin, and a decent amount of stocks. Folks, I bought the dip. I'm going to tell you everything that I bought here while Bitcoin was right around 95,000. And some of it's going to surprise you, but I have sold nothing and I have bought the dip. I've taken the advice of a lot of institutional leaders, as this is the institutional cycle. A lot of folks coming out today, as you'll see, saying buy the dip. I'm going to be one of them. I'm not an institution, and I'm also not a financial advisor. And none of this is financial advice, but it is something that I do, right? I buy the dip and I hodl. As an investor, you have to think about these markets differently when you're trading and when you're investing. A lot of folks are going to be caught up today. They're going to get chopped up. They're going to sell their assets thinking with a trader's hat on. Now, trading is not bad. Trading is excellent. We teach people how to trade in our trading community, but trading is not investing, right? And today on the morning news, once I get through the news, I'm going to tell you all what I bought as an investor, right? And I'm going to tell you how that's different from what traders are thinking. What I want to do, because a lot of folks today are going to be feeling some pain because it's their first cycle and they don't really understand how these markets work. I want to start off with a graphic because this is what people think it's like to hodl. This is what people think it's like, that first graphic on top. How it's actually like to hodl is a maze and a journey of adventure, disappointment, and overcoming, right? And so what it's actually like to hodl is very difficult. And that's why people judge investors, judge Wall Street and say, "Oh, what you guys do is so easy. You get lucky. Why billionaires shouldn't exist." Well, the reality is that investing is difficult. And the reason it's difficult is because you are fighting the urge to sell a lot of the time, right? So I like this graphic. I think it's cool. I think it's actually a pretty decent summary of what we're seeing today. Let's get into some breaking news here. U.S. and Switzerland trade deal to cut tariffs by 15%. So progress being made there on the trade side. Michael Saylor was on CNBC this morning, and he said we are buying quite a bit of Bitcoin. Now, of course, we don't know how much MicroStrategy is buying here on this dip, but this is interesting. This is happening, and he's broadcasting that he's buying. Tether CEO Paolo Ardianani, Paolo A, says that Bitcoin Black Friday is today. Now, Tether equals institutions, right? Tether is quickly becoming one of the most important institutions in the world because it's buying a lot of American debt, right? When you are the one that is coming to the table in times of need for the United States, the biggest organization in the world, you become important. Tether is important. Tether is institutions. So when the CEO of that institution is coming out and telling you something, pay attention, right? All right. Moving along here. Michael Saylor, he was on CNBC. We put out a separate tweet on this. Expects Bitcoin to rally from here. He also said that, right? He said that at when Bitcoin was 95.5. We put a little tweet out here showing that Bitcoin had dropped under 95K. So there you go. That's some of the breaking news there. Let's go over to our sentiment outlook. The sentiment outlook is bears roar from the diaphragm, right? What it feels like right now, no matter if you're a seasoned investor or you're a newer investor, is you can hear the bears roaring. Now, the fear and greed is at 16 out of 100. That is extreme fear. It's only a tick higher from yesterday, which was 15. I think that there's a chance that we see this in single digits, right? We'll just have to wait and see. 25 basis point cut in December is 54% likely. And that is the reason, right? That is the why of today, at least on the surface. So if we go over to the spread for this, you can see that this actually hasn't improved since yesterday. It's basically hovered around the same levels. So when I look at the weekly chart here for the Fed decision in December, what I see, let me adjust this so you can see the most recent information here. What I see is a narrowing, right? And some uncertainty, right? We had certainty here, 25 basis points. cut was more than 70% likely, and then we moved into a period of uncertainty. But what I'm also noticing here is that these lines have not touched, right? It has never during this period become more likely that we would get a pause. It became less likely that we could get a cut. That is true, but it is not more likely that we would get a pause, right? So that doesn't mean that we're not going to get a pause. This is just an odds. This is just a betting spread on Polymarket. But at the end of the day, it never became more likely that we would get a pause. And this was the why. Remember, this was the reason for this market sell-off. At least this was the reason that that investors were waiting for, similar to 1010, right? When there was a huge liquidity wick to the downside, right? There was a reason, there was a why behind that, and that was Donald Trump announcing 100% base tariffs on China, right? And or kind of threatening that. Okay, that was the why at the surface level of the news. But the actual mechanics of the sell-off were much more complicated as we came to learn. This is similar, right? I would say that the mechanics behind the sell-off this time is not the complex price fixing that was going on, price vulnerability that was going on in the Binance system with how their stablecoins were valued as collateral. This time, I don't think it's going to get that technical. I think what it is this time is that there's just some levels that Bitcoin was probably always going to come back down to and test before it went higher to new all-time highs. Okay, so there is a why, and that why is that the Federal Reserve has board members that earlier this week have come out and said things that make the market less certain that the Fed is going to cut in December. Now, they might not cut in December, but there's also a chance that they do cut in December. In fact, that chance is more likely than not. Okay, let's move along here. But that is the reason, that is the why. If you're asking, why is the market down today? It's because the Federal Reserve is likely going to cut rates, but the likelihood of them cutting rates is less than it was at the beginning of the week. Okay, so the markets had to reprice in the bearish sentiment, the hawkish sentiment coming from Federal Reserve voting members earlier this week. That is the why, and that is what we're trading on. That is what we're investing on. 300 million worth of crypto longs were liquidated in 10 minutes. This, I believe, was yesterday. So you can see huge liquidations were done, and that does enrich certain folks, certain institutions. We talk about this, how manipulation works. Price action is flushed out leverage. AI-related energy stocks are sliding. Okay, this is where I'll be camping out today with the morning news. A little bit of analysis. We can't stay too long, but this is really good. This is what we want to see. Now, if you're hyper concentrated your investments into AI energy stocks, you may not want to see this. But this was the pre-market. Bloom Energy was down 8. Okla was down 7.7. NewScale down 8. These were all down more than 7%. Now, why is that putting a smile on my face this morning? Because of what we're about to get into. There has essentially been a diversion of new liquidity away from crypto that would have gone into crypto, is gone into AI stocks. Now, AI stocks are a real, exciting, sexy, shiny investment opportunity that is relatively low risk and high reward. So, of course, new money coming into the market saying, hey, I want to go risk my money and have my money work for me. It takes a look at crypto and it says, maybe I'll do 2%. But then the rest of it goes straight into AI equity, right? Now, obviously, there's money going all over the place. Gold getting quite a bit, if you haven't noticed. Silver was getting quite a bit through a large portion of Q3, Q4. But crypto was kind of left behind. So I have a smile on my face when I'm reading headlines like this, right? AI-related stocks are sliding because that is signaling to me that there's an opportunity now for new liquidity to go into Bitcoin and crypto, into that crypto side. Okay. We have some bullish vibes today. Jack Dorsey's Cash App now lets users pay with Bitcoin and stablecoins. That's great. And then we talked about what Michael Saylor said. Some things to look forward to here, not necessarily bullish or bearish, is just information that's coming out. December 1st, quantitative tightening ends. December 10th, the FOMC decision, Supreme Court ruling on tariffs, right? We don't have a date for that, but we could be hearing that this week, could be hearing that in February. We don't know, but that is going to be important. Economic data published, lots to unpack. We don't know exactly what is going to come out. Actually, I believe there was some announcement that a lot of the data that would have been released while the government was shut down will actually not be released. So, that's uncertainty. That's playing a role in why we're seeing some down testing in these prices on the crypto and the equity side. Asia was red. Okay. So there was another spread I wanted to bring you to all's attention. This is the Clarity Act signed into law 2025. This has been creeping up. However, the number for this poly market is 37%. Okay. So that is less likely than not, meaning it's still in 2025 likely not to happen. Okay. That's not great. That's not bullish for short-term and midterm investors that were hoping to get out in Q4, right? Likely that is, your exit strategy for crypto is not, in my opinion, is probably not going to be Q4 at this point. Maybe it will be. We'll see. But this is a spread that would help investors kind of come to that conclusion of whether or not Q4 is going to be their exit point for crypto. All right, now let's get to this interesting piece here from Wintermute. They have published some more information here. And when Wintermute speaks, we pay attention. If you want to go check out their whole report, you can go check this out on their website. The title is Bitcoin and the NASDAQ, the correlation that only hurts. Okay. Stay with me here because it's going to sound salty, but it gets sweet. The correlation remains high at 0.8, but Bitcoin reacts more to NASDAQ losses than gains. This negative performance skew is now at levels last seen in late 2022, yet we're still sitting at near all-time highs. Okay, very interesting observation made by Wintermute, looking at the correlation between the NASDAQ and Bitcoin, saying there's still a tight correlation, but Bitcoin has not been enjoying the upswings as much as the NASDAQ has. And when there is downswings in the NASDAQ, Bitcoin has been selling off disproportionately to the NASDAQ. So that 0.2 correlation, that 0.2 lack of correlation is a lot of it's to the downside. When the NASDAQ sells off, it sells off a lot less than Bitcoin. Okay. Now, does that seem like a bad thing to you? This is good for newer investors. Think this one through for yourself. Maybe even pause this video and wait because I'm about to reveal the answer. But does that seem like something that is bearish long term? Does that seem like something that would put Bitcoin's price by April of next year lower than where it is today or higher than where it is today? Think for yourself. Develop those neural cortexes in your brain to try to come to conclusions yourself. I'm not going anywhere, but it's good for you to understand these things yourself. Okay, Wintermute says, why is this happening now? Mind share has shifted to equities. So that is what I was talking about earlier, where you have new liquidity coming into risk, saying, I want to take risk in the markets. I want to take risk in new ideas. And it looks at crypto. It says, okay, that's cool. I'm going to allocate there, but it's going to be anemic versus what I'm going to allocate over into equities that are of the AI variety. So that's the mind share has shifted. The other thing is crypto's liquidity profile has changed. Okay, the asymmetry usually shows up near bottoms, not tops. The asymmetry usually shows up near bottoms, not tops. It is an exhaustion signal, not a euphoria signal. Now, there's a lot more in this report, and because we're not too close to the end of this morning news, I will go through some of this report with you all. But we do have one more story, and then I wanted to tell you guys what I bought on this dip. Okay, so before I get into the full article, that is the answer. I said I was challenging you all, saying, hey, think about this for yourself. What is the answer? The answer is that this is bullish, that this type of analysis right here explains why there has been a failure to launch for Bitcoin and crypto. And it also explains and kind of concludes that what we're likely to see next is less of the same, right? So putting that in very simple terms, altcoin season is still ahead. Okay, now I know you might be hearing that. You might be hearing me say that today, and you're like, Taylor, how could you? You're being bullish at a time when you should be really thinking about selling. And I understand that. I do understand that. But when we're looking at Wintermute's published data here from yesterday, what they're showing is that the best is likely yet to come, and the strength that we've seen in Bitcoin is actually evidence of that. So let's dive a little bit deeper here into this article. So we already went through the summary of it. Right now, the skew is firmly negative, showing that Bitcoin still trades at a high beta expression of risk sentiment, but only when it cuts the wrong way. Negative asymmetry of this cycle of this scale usually appears when sentiment has washed out, which has historically been a reflection of price activity. We talked about the mind share shifting to equities. We talked about the liquidity profile. The second part is structural, as discussed last week. Crypto's liquidity profile today is different than in previous risk cycles. Stablecoin issuance has plateaued. ETF inflows have slowed, and market depth across exchanges hasn't recovered to early 2024 levels. That fragility amplifies negative reactions when equities correct. The result: Bitcoin's downside participation remains mechanically higher than its opposite, widening that performance skew. Okay, so a lower liquidity profile has led to underperformance versus the Nasdaq. Given we've put down multiple all-time highs for Bitcoin, and we are 20% off the Bitcoin top, it's going to be more than that now. I'll go measure that out here in a second. Despite this dynamic, speaks to how well Bitcoin has been holding up. Okay, so this is an exhaustion indicator. This is showing Wintermute, when they're looking at all the data they have access to, which is more than I have access to, more than professional investors have access to. They are saying that this is not over, right? Now, we might see more downside. And when they published this, they did not know what was going to happen today. Although if anybody knew what was going to happen with price action, it might be Wintermute. But they did not know what was going to happen today. Okay. So they're not saying that the bottom is in. What they're saying is that the dynamics between the NASDAQ and Bitcoin, the correlation between these two asset classes, NASDAQ being the correlation between these two assets, they are saying something that ultimately is bullish for Bitcoin. And I would encourage you all to go read this report yourself. I'm going to drop that in the live chat here, and I will put that in the comments if I can remember to put that in the comments. Last thing I wanted to show you all was David Bailey has tweeted out. He is the CEO of Nakamoto, which is one of the Bitcoin treasury companies. He said, as 13F filings come out, cool to see which institutional investors are taking positions in Naka. So far in Q4, 25 new firms have disclosed positions: BlackRock, Vanguard, Correct Capital, and Geode Capital. Okay, so what does this mean? Why am I bringing this to your attention? Well, I bought Naka, right? I'm have been disappointed with the action of Naka, but that has not been too far out of the norm for the Bitcoin treasury and crypto treasury companies as a whole. Naka is one that I bought more today of, right? Because I'm dollar cost averaging on it. I don't have time to get too much into that, but that is the news for today, folks. Everything really hinged, this movement to the downside really hinged on the surface was the Federal Reserve switching its tone about rate cuts in December. That was the surface level. What was going on below the surface was Bitcoin was waiting for an excuse to go down and touch levels that it should go down and touch, right? What goes up must come down, and what is going to go up higher is going to go up higher because it has an adequate price action base. It has created a sustainable movement to the upside. It's not just climbing a ladder infinitely and then all of a sudden it falls back and tips over. It's climbing the ladder, attaching itself, climbing the ladder more, attaching itself, climbing the ladder more, attaching itself. And those attachments are corrections to the downside, right? Testing to see, okay, if we put in a new all-time high, if we went down lower, where are the bulls going to stop selling? That is the ultimate question of why we go down lower, like the period that we're in now. Well, the market wants to know, investors want to know, is there a reason why bulls would just keep selling and the bears start to take over? So far, there is actually zero reason why they're selling Bitcoin. There's a big reason why they're selling Bitcoin in a macro environment that is changing. It is not priced in that the Fed is going to pause in December. So the market is having to reprice in a larger percentage chance that the Fed does not cut, but pause in December. Now, they still might cut in December, right? It's a challenging market for some. And if you're your first cycle, it's difficult in a lot of ways, but it's actually easier than past cycles, in my opinion. All right, we talked about the breaking news. We talked about Wintermute. Let me go ahead and reveal what I bought today. So this morning, I bought mostly stocks, but I did buy some altcoins. The altcoins, I'll start with the altcoins. I bought Aster, I bought Hyperliquid, and I bought Aave. Okay. The stocks that I bought, and this is not financial advice, this is just sharing with you all what I bought, right? And I will attempt to get to the comments here, but there's a lot of them today. So we'll see if I get to how much I get to. Okay, so the stocks that I bought are Qualcomm, SoftBank, Block, which tickers XYZ, and HODL. Okay, so I bought Bitcoin ETF, HODL. I also bought Naka, which is Kindly MD, is the name of the company, and I bought Bullish. Bullish is BLSH. All right, so that's what I bought. Now, why did I buy today? Why did I wait to buy today? Well, because the prices are lower, right? That's the simple answer. You want to buy, when you're an investor, you want to buy low and you want to sell high. Okay. And so when I look at Bitcoin's chart, and this is probably all the charting I'm going to do today. When I look at Bitcoin's chart, there are some reasons to be bearish on the chart. There are some things that could make you bearish to think that we could go lower, and we could, right? I think I've heard some pretty talented analysts say 88 is potentially a level that we'll get down to for Bitcoin, and that's not a level that I would be shocked to see Bitcoin at by the end of this weekend, or potentially by the end of next week, going into Thanksgiving, right? However, as an investor, I have to buy when the market is giving me a discount in something like Bitcoin, right? And Tim, I believe, tweeted that something like this out is like, if you're not buying at these levels, then like, what are you doing, right? Because when you, let me help you remember something that you've probably had this thought in the past. You come into the market, someone explains what Bitcoin is, and you're like, yeah, I like it, I get it, and then you come in and you buy here. All right, let's say you bought in at the previous new all-time high around 1079, right? You came in, you bought it, you're like, man, Bitcoin is actually pretty sick. You went and told all your friends and you were like, hey, and there's a lot of smart people that think it's going to go higher. Well, guess what? Bitcoin from here went lower. Okay. Now, did you sell it? If you sold it, then that means you're a very new investor and you bought high and you sold low. But if you have good guidance, if you're learning about investing as you're getting started, you're not just investing, you're not just buying something and then putting your brain to sleep. You're actually buying something and then activating your brain and understanding more about what you invested and understanding more about investing in general, then you may have bought again here, right? You bought high, kind of a mistake, but buying low after you bought high can fix the mistake, can correct the mistake in a way. Okay. So, but buying low is the name of the game. Right now, we are low. We are low compared to the previous high that we just put in. Okay. Now, what you'll notice on my screen is that we're seeing something we haven't seen in this cycle so far, which is a weekly candle. Looks like it may close below this 50-day moving average. And that is not bullish. That is categorically not something that is bullish, right? But there's two reasons why this is not something that you should sell at this point, in my opinion. Or let me just say, this is not something that I'm selling at this point, right? And that is that we have 2 days left. We have 2 days left in this weekly candlestick where Bitcoin could make a resumption to the upside and close again above this 50-day moving average. That would be quite bullish, by the way. The other thing is that this is low, right? It's low relative to the recent price action, right? This is in the lower range of, if you just draw an arbitrary box, it's in the lower range of where we've been trading. If you even go back here and include the previous price action, right? This is still below the halfway point. I know I'm drawn like a 4-year-old here, but this, you see the point is that we are low, and you buy low and sell high. You don't sell low and buy high. Hopefully that's hitting home for some folks. Now, let me just make something very clear. When you're an investor, especially a newer investor, one of the ways you're going to get chopped up by the market, one of the ways you're going to get smoked, one of the ways you're going to lose money is by not practicing proper risk management. One way that you could practice improper risk management at this point in time is that although Bitcoin is low and people like me are buying Bitcoin, you can still make a mistake in buying Bitcoin right now if you do not use money that you can afford to lose by buying that Bitcoin. If you have rent checks, if you have a phone bill, if you have a trip to Costco or Walmart to stock up on food for your kids that you have not paid for yet, and you're buying anything other than paying for those bills, paying for that food, you have made a mistake. Don't make a mistake worse by selling by buying even more Bitcoin, right? Correct the mistake, potentially take a little bit of a loss, and go pay your bills. Okay. As an investor, we still have to operate the human side of our existence. We still have to pay our bills, pay our water bills. We have to put food on the table, keep an emergency fund for any kind of unforeseen things that could be coming up. We have to practice good risk management. Okay. So when folks like myself and Tim and others, when we're talking about trades that we're making, when we're talking about levels, and then we see people in the chat saying, oh my gosh, how could you say this? People are suffering. That what that tells me is there's people who are entering the market who don't understand what investing really even is. If you are feeling emotional, that's one thing. It's okay to feel emotional. I have felt emotional about price go down in my portfolio. I have felt emotional. Feeling emotional is not a bad thing. It is a normal thing. Every investor feels emotional. Acting on emotion is often a mistake. Okay. You are much less likely to act on emotion if you are properly risk managing. Now, I don't have time right now to explain to you all the ins and outs of risk management. That is why there is a link down in the description that is the VIP trading group. You can access that VIP trading group and you can talk to me. You can talk to Tim. You can talk to some of our other very seasoned investors about what it looks like to invest in crypto, what it looks like to understand these markets more intently. None of it's financial advice. You are learning about what we do. And I would encourage you to go ahead and check that out. And if you're not ready to start paying for membership to a trading and investing community, what you can do is join our free Discord, ask questions, and we will get to those questions as well. We talk to people and you can scroll up in the free Discord general chat and you can see all the questions that have been asked. A lot of people asking about trading platforms that we use and different things like that. You can ask whatever you want. You can ask me what my favorite color is, what my favorite animal, whatever you want to ask. I would love to answer some fun questions like that. But overall, I'm bullish. I'm buying this dip, but I'm buying this dip with money that I can afford to lose. I'm buying this dip with money that I believe will be much higher in April of next year. And what happens to it between now and then is potentially quite a bit of downside, right? But I have a longer time horizon that I can afford to take some losses, not sell for a loss, but hold for a loss in anticipation of these assets going much, much higher. Now, it would have to be another time that I would tell you exactly the fundamentals of why I'm so confident in buying this dip and what the actual assets are. I talked about SoftBank. I talked about Nakamoto. In and I am very confident in those assets, but I don't have time right now to talk to you all about that. So keep tuning in. Maybe next time I will give you more explanation of those things. Likely, if you're listening to the sound of my voice, someone has already explained to you why Bitcoin is valuable and you're very excited to continue to buy. And I would just remind you, when you bought in to the market, you probably had the thought, man, I'm going to buy a little bit now and then I'm going to wait till it dips. Am I wrong? Did you have that thought? If you're newer to investing, you came into the market, you bought Bitcoin, maybe you bought a little Ethereum, and you said to yourself, let me keep some of this dry powder to the side and I'll use that when I buy the dip, right? You probably didn't. You probably deployed it quite quickly after that. And now we've had a much more serious dip. my encouragement is if you do have dry powder that you can't afford to lose, we're in a dip right now, right? All right, folks, that's it. Have a great rest of your day and happy dip buying. Adios.